Step into the Roman Empire around 100 CE, where a sinister twist to animal crossbreeding took place. This one was really bad. Romans were known, of course, for their elaborate gladiatorial games, massive events, and of course they experimented with crossbreeding with different large predators, specifically for the arena battles. That's right, they bred lions with tigers, creating hybrids known as ligers, you guessed it, that were used in gladiatorial contests. Yeah, you have to battle and fight an animal that doesn't even exist. Good luck, we're playing God. The resulting creatures were of course terrifying in or out of battle, combining the ferocity of both species. Now, how did these monstrous hybrids affect the spectators' views on these crazy events? Did the Romans see them as a triumph of human ingenuity or a grotesque display of power? I'm betting they went, yeah, fight, and that's all they went. Probably it. Chinese dragon hybrids. In ancient China, around 500 CE, a particularly eerie form of animal crossbreeding emerged. This one's got Game of Thrones written all over it. Scholars attempted to create hybrid creatures that resembled the mythical dragons of Chinese folklore. They tried to make dragons. Are you kidding me? What are we doing? They crossbred various large reptiles such as lizards and snakes, praying to capture the dragon's mythical traits. Can you imagine that? What if it worked? They're like, oh my god, run! The result was a disturbing array of hybrid creatures with dragon-like features, but often grotesque and fearsome appearances. Wasn't exactly a dragon, but definitely was not a dragon. How do these hybrids fit into Chinese mythology? Are all those dragon paintings real? Did they nail it? Did they stir a mix of awe and dread? Comment down below all your thoughts about dragons. Do you want a dragon? I don't want a dragon, that's too much work. Imagine picking up the poop for a dragon. My back's hurting thinking about it. Travel back to ancient Egypt now, around 2000 BC, very long time ago, when priests and farmers were experimenting with hybrid animals for mystical and also practical purposes. Picture them crossbreeding domestic cattle with wild aurochs to create more resilient and larger cattle. We need bigger cattle, now! These hybrids were not only used in agriculture, but were also believed to hold sacred significance. Imagine the chilling rituals performed just to ensure these hybrids brought both prosperity and divine favor, and didn't decide just to eat us all instead? How did these ancient Egyptians view these creations? Was this a Dr. Frankenstein type deal? Were they like, oh no? Or was it reverence? Or was it fear? My bet is fear. Number 7, medieval beasts. In medieval Europe around the 12th century, some scholars dabbled in disturbing crossbreeding experiments driven by a mix of curiosity and, of course, given the times, superstition. That was most of it. One particularly unsettling practice involved crossbreeding domestic pigs with wild boars. We need a piggier pig. Let's go. This created hybrids known as boar pigs, which in my opinion, a little uncreative. Could have called it a dragon or something. And they were both prized for their meat and feared for their aggression. These hybrids were bred to enhance traits for hunting and consumption, but their violent tendencies often led to horrifying accidents. Yeah, of course, you make a new crazy animal and you're like, oh, it's not friendly. No, neither are you. What are you doing? Imagine the fear these creatures instilled in medieval hunters. I mean, it's medieval times and now it's getting even worse. Good game, folks. We now travel to the Aztec Empire around 1500 CE, where the practice of creating terrifying hybrids took on a very dark twist. And that's coming from the Aztecs, okay? So buckle in. The Aztecs were known for their ritualistic practices and experiments with crossbreeding animals. One gruesome example involved the mixing of jaguars with pumas to create fearsome hybrids used in ceremonial rituals. A jaguar. Ajuma. I can't say Ajuma, definitely can't say that one. Maybe that's why they didn't make a name for this. These hybrids with their combined ferocity were believed to possess supernatural powers. Imagine the chilling ceremonies where these chimeras were paraded before the gods. What must you have thought? Did these creatures embody the Aztecs' desire for control over the natural world? Or were they simply and only a tool of intimidation?
At number 5, Aurorantugenensis. Aurorantugenensis is one of the oldest early humans in our lineage. Auroran lived between 6.2 and 5.8 million years ago and was first discovered in 2001, giving him the nickname the Millennial Man. So far, 13 fossils have been found from 5 different specimens of Aurorantugenensis, and so far what we know about this species is that they had teeth that were similar to modern humans, but more importantly that evidence from their upper femur suggests that they were bipedal, given the evidence of bone buildup found on other bipeds. This species was also able to climb trees, but this discovery was very exciting for scientists because this evidence showed that early humans started their journey of bipedalism so long ago. Because this species is at the base of the human family tree, it had more ape-like qualities than anything else, other than the fact that it was probably bipedal. So far, Aurorantugenensis is the only species in the Auroran genus. At number 4, Kenyanthropus platyops. Not much is known about this next species, but we do know that they had an early human companion back in the day, and that companion was Lucy, aka Australopithecus afarensis. Kenyanthropus platyops was a flat-faced, small-brained bipedal species that lived in eastern Africa about 3.5 million years ago during the time of Australopithecus afarensis. Kenyanthropus could represent a closer branch to modern humans on our evolutionary tree, but so far there isn't enough evidence to fully support that hypothesis. Was first discovered in the late 90s in, you guessed it, Kenya. And when the remains were discovered, scientists saw that this early human's fossils featured characteristics that were previously unseen with any other human fossils. Though comparing the remains of Kenyanthropus and Australopithecus afarensis, scientists noted that these two species had very different diets and therefore probably didn't have to fight for the same food source. So far, scientists don't exactly know how to place Kenyanthropus in our early human family tree because there isn't enough evidence, but some people believe that this species could be closely related to the Homo genus. At number 3, Australopithecus sediba. The discovery of Australopithecus sediba fossils in the Malpa Cave are one of the most complete early human fossil sets that have been found, and they give a lot of insight into the moment where the genus Homo evolved. This species lived between 1.97 and 1.98 million years ago, and some scientists believe that they are the bridging point between Australopithecus and Homo. Based on the size and shape of Australopithecus sediba's teeth, chest, pelvic bones, skull, and legs, scientists have been able to pinpoint where certain Homo characteristics came from and when these features appeared. Evidence found in the remains of Australopithecus sediba also show that this species adapted to a different way of upright walking. Normally, we would see humans walking with their feet pointed straight out, but based on this species' remains, Australopithecus sediba walked with their feet pointing inwards, with their weight put on the outer parts of their feet, showing that humans evolved on more than one path of walking. At number 2, Ardipithecus cadaba. Ardipithecus cadaba was a species of early human who resembled very closely to a chimpanzee but was also bipedal. This species lived in Western Africa between 5.8 and 5.2 million years ago. Not much is known about Ardipithecus cadaba because this species is only known in the fossil record. However, these scientists are so good that they were able to determine this species' bipedality based on a toe bone alone because they could see that this species was able to push off their toes as if they were walking like you or I. One of the only other things that we know about Ardipithecus cadaba is that they had teeth that were similar to that of chimpanzees, but they were more narrow, which suggests that they were designed to eat fibrous foods. At number 1, the Denisovans. Now this species is probably the most mysterious of them all because we know that they once existed, but there's not enough evidence and fossil data to actually give them a scientific name. Most of what we know about them comes from DNA evidence. The Denisovans were a species or subspecies of archaic human who once lived in Asia. This species is what some researchers call morphospecies, which are, quote, a group of biological organisms whose members differ from all other groups in some aspect of their form and structure. Basically, these quote-unquote humans looked nothing like us nor any of our ancient human ancestors. All we know about the Denisovans is that they are different. This species was discovered in a lab when scientists pulled 50,000-year-old DNA out of a finger bone of a fossil that was discovered in a cave in Siberia. Given their age and the location that the remains were found, researchers assumed that their DNA would match those of Neanderthals. However, their findings revealed that this DNA belonged to a group of humans who last shared an ancestor with Neanderthals approximately 765,000 years ago. Other than this information, not much else is known about this population. If more fossils are discovered, then they may be granted the scientific name of Homo denisova, but until then, they remain a mystery to the scientific community. Now before I wrap up this video, I want you guys to tell me if you could travel back to any point in history, where would you go and why? I think I would want to travel back to ancient Egypt during the time that the pyramids were being built. Those things are so precisely made that I need to see firsthand how it was done. Coming in at number 10, Nineveh. The Nineveh civilization was one of the oldest and most impressive civilizations of the ancient world. Located in what is now modern-day Mosul in Iraq, this civilization thrived mostly under the rule of King Sennacherib from 704 BC to 681 BC. Under his leadership, Nineveh was made the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Their kingdom was massive and had a lot of impressive infrastructure infrastructure like a 15-gate wall around the city, as well as parks, aqueducts, canals, and an 80-room palace. This place was so extravagant that some scholars today believe that the famous Hanging Gardens of Babylon were actually located in Nineveh and were commissioned by King Sennacherib. Other than their infrastructure, their culture was also incredibly impressive as well. Nineveh was known as a center for the development of arts, sciences, and architecture, and scribes and scholars from elsewhere would flock to Nineveh to further their studies. They had a library that contained over 30,000 inscribed clay tablets, and one of those tablets included a story of a great flood that drowned the world except for one man who survived by building a boat and searching for dry land. Does that story sound familiar? It might, since it's an early version of the story of Noah's Ark. This version of the story though was inscribed 1,000 years before it ever reached Hebrew text. Now, even though this was a large and powerful civilization, all good things must come to an end, and they met their end after a royal feud led to the breakup, and this led to the joint forces of Persians, Babylonians, and others in the area to burning Nineveh to the ground.
Number 9. The Mesopotamian civilization. Next up, we have the first civilization ever recorded in history. Their origins date back to as early as 500 BC in what's now Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. Mesopotamia is a staple in history. It's actually the first society that developed agriculture, and its name translates to between rivers or land between rivers. It was a perfect spot to domesticate animals for farming and for food. The oldest wheel ever was found in southern Mesopotamian city of Ur. They invented the wheel, cursive writing, and something even more important than all, they invented beer. The oldest recipe for beer comes from Mesopotamia. Wheels, poems, beer, this sounds like the world's oldest, and dare I say it, best party. Of course, aliens also come into play too when looking back at Mesopotamian culture. They had an advanced understanding of the cosmos using astronomical instruments. Now, one of these instruments was this Venus tablet of Ammisadaka, which could predict these astronomical events. Maybe our earliest civilization made contact and now they're just trying to reach out. Can you get ghosted over a tablet? Probably.
At number 8, Vinca. We're throwing it all the way back to the Neolithic period because we're talking about the Vinca civilization. Vinca is known as the oldest Neolithic civilization in Europe. These guys were establishing their own civilization in the Stone Age long before civilizations like Egypt and Mesopotamia. Though we don't know all that much about them, we do know that they had one of the earliest writing systems in the world. Researchers have discovered around 700 characters that are believed to have been their way of forming written sentences, though this is all just a theory for now since these characters have yet to be translated. The archaeological evidence that has been found from the Vinca civilization suggests that this group of people thrived in the area along the banks of the Danube River for more than 1,000 years before being abandoned. No one really knows why the Vinca civilization abandoned the area or where they went, but maybe one day we will get those answers.
Number 7. The Mayans. It's 2021, which means the world thankfully didn't end in 2012. But that movie was good. Kind of, not really. But the Mayan calendar did predict that on December 21st, 2012, this would be the end of us. No meteors hit and Thanos didn't snap away any of us, but that date did mark the end of their 5,125 year-long count calendar. Yeah, and you thought you were a planner. These guys were crazy. One of the earliest uses of the number 0 being in mathematics came from the Mayans. They were super advanced for their time, and they were also quite artistic. They drew complex hieroglyphs on long strips of paper made from fig tree bark. I can't write 4 sentences down on paper without my wrist hurting. I have to like slap it around for a minute. These guys are on a whole new level. These stories date all the way back to the late pre-classic period, so around 300 BCE. That is so old. The Olmecs of Mesoamerica figured out how to consume chocolate, sure, but like the art that we see etched into the stone walls around them, the Mayans made it beautiful. The Mayans would mix chocolate with water and chili peppers and honey. They would make it as a spicy drink. I'm gonna stick with the old pumpkin spice for now. I think that's the riskiest I'll go. Thanks so much though. Debit.
At number 6, Mehergar. Even though Mehergar was a pretty impressive civilization, no one really knows about it because very little interest was invested in learning more about it. Mehergar was one of the oldest civilizations in the world, situated in what is now modern-day Pakistan. Excavations of the site started back in the 1970s, but due to the government's lack of interest, looting, and land erosion, it made it hard to learn much about this ancient settlement. From evidence that has been gathered, we do know that Mehergar had a population of around 25,000 people, and based on some of the remains recovered from this ancient civilization, there was evidence of dental surgery, which, as you can imagine, isn't really something you see very often, especially at the time that this civilization existed. Other than that, many of the other secrets of the civilization are buried very deep in the earth, so it makes it much harder for researchers to uncover them. What has been found though are some pretty well preserved buildings made from brick, and even a formal cemetery. Who knows what else we might learn from this site.
Number 5, Dirk Mahara Chakrazi. This one is actually a more recent discovery made in the past 60ish years. The Dirk Mahara is Gaelic for marine lizard, which is exactly what it was, kind of. It's best described as what would happen if you mated a crocodile with a dolphin. Flipper, but scalier. Fossil remains were pieced together like prehistoric Jenga after they were first discovered in 1959. Finally, in January 2015, scientists announced a new genus of ichthyosaur. This creature predates the Jurassic period and was probably one of the head honchos around that time. Had it lived long enough into the Jurassic period, it would probably have been gobbled up, considering the creatures who came after were, quite a bit larger, as we'll discover. Number 4, Pliosaur. So we've talked about massive, more terrifying versions of things on this list, but we couldn't leave out a warped version of a crocodile, now could we? Growing to about 59 feet in length and lived around 155 million years ago, this thing could swallow a Dirk Mahara in one bite. Not surprising, since its jaw was about the size of the average human, complete with razor-sharp gnashers. According to fossils found in England and Norway, this creature resembles a crocodile in very similar ways, aside from its long paddle-shaped limbs. This allowed it to swim at insanely fast speeds, able to travel around 6 miles per hour. Archaeologists have found the remains of mainly mollusks and other marine reptiles in its stomach, but more terrifyingly, other dinosaurs. Jury is still out as to whether they took the creatures down themselves or feasted on any remains they found, the latter being more likely. Number 3, the Megalodon. Scared of sharks? Well, maybe skip ahead because we are about to talk about the guy we are all grateful doesn't exist anymore. The Megalodon. 2 words, Big Daddy. This guy was bigger than a school bus with giant teeth ready to tear into ambitious prey like whales and whatever else it felt like. Fossils of this mammoth of nightmares have been found across the world from Europe to Africa to North America. This beast had no boundaries, and of course, when you're as big as this guy, why would you? It's a common belief that they coexisted with dinosaurs, but they actually missed them by around 40 million years. They actually lived around 2.6 to 1.5 million years ago, which implies it may have been around for humans. The reason they went extinct, however, is assumed because of the Ice Age. The Megalodon enjoyed warm waters, and it might have diminished its food supply, so thanks nature, you're the best. Number 2, Leviathan melvillei, the ultimate killer whale. The whale's so big it had to eat other whales. And also, if you're wondering if I'm meaning to say Leviathan, I'm not. Though it was originally Leviathan, they had to change it because it was taken. So Leviathan it is. If you've heard the horrific story of Moby Dick, then this would be the whale that they faced, though probably not because they were extinct long before the book was even written. They lived around 12 to 13 million years ago during the Miocene epoch and could grow up to 45 to 60 feet. The head alone was around 3 meters long. On top of their immense size, they had a terrifying set of sharp, deep-rooted teeth, each about the size of a 2-liter bottle of pop, which is more than double the size of a T-Rex's teeth. So if big teeth needs big game and the Leviathan rose to the occasion, from large squids to other whales, the Leviathan was a force to be reckoned with and one I never ever want to encounter. So if there's a trip going back in time, count me out. Number 1, the Tylosaurus. It sounds massive, it is massive. It makes you glad you weren't around 65 million years ago. The Tylosaurus was a water-bound lizard who had strong, sturdy limbs that evolved to eventually walk on land. Not a pleasant thought. Its gaping mouth allowed it to swallow creatures whole, or if it couldn't do that, its strong jaws and razor-sharp teeth took care of that. It could grow to the length of 45 feet. I'm 5'6", so it could fit about 8 of me. The remains of the great creature have been found all across Texas and Kansas.
At number 10, Paranthropus robustus. Let's kick things off with a genus of hominin that we didn't get to discuss in our last video. The genus Paranthropus was a group of now extinct hominins known for their robust skulls and distinct jaw shapes. Paranthropus robustus was one of 3 species within this genus and lived between 1.6 and 1.2 million years ago in southern Africa. These hominins were quite short compared to later humans, standing at an average height of 3'9" for males and 3'3" for females, so these guys were pretty short. This species was known for their chewing. Yeah, weird flex, I know, but the standards for excellence were pretty low 1.6 million years ago. Their teeth and jaws were specifically designed for eating tough fibrous foods, and their jaw muscles were very large and strong to make all that happen, hence the name robustus. Other than their impressive eating abilities, not much else has been discovered about this species. No stone tools have been associated with Paranthropus robustus, however it is believed that they did use bones as tools to dig in termite mounds for snack time. At number 9, Paranthropus boise. Up next we have another species of Paranthropus, Paranthropus boise. This early hominin came before Paranthropus robustus and lived in eastern Africa between 2.3 and 1.2 million years ago. Much like other classifications of Paranthropus, this species also had a specialized skull for intense chewing. They had very large faces because of their large jaws and temporalis muscles, which are the muscles that you use for chewing. What Paranthropus boise had that other members of his genus didn't was thick dental enamel. In fact, Boise had the thickest dental enamel of any early human. They also had larger teeth than Paranthropus robustus, and these guys basically just lived to eat. It was their only real skill. Other than their eating habits, we know that Paranthropus boise also lived mostly in grasslands. Now before we carry on talking about our extinct ancestors and talking about their ancient lineage, I would first like to take a moment to ask you guys to consider subscribing to the channel. We've got so many awesome videos for you guys to enjoy and learn from, so come join the bumblebee family. Moving on to the third species in the Paranthropus genus, we have Paranthropus aethiopicus. Because very few fossils of this species have been discovered, scientists don't really know much about Paranthropus aethiopicus. But we do know that they lived between 2.7 and 2.3 million years ago in eastern Africa. Like the rest of his Paranthropus pals, he was built to eat. The shape and size of this species' teeth suggest that they lived on a mostly vegetarian diet. Since we don't really know much else about this species, I'll instead tell you about what happened to the Paranthropus genus. Well, obviously they all went extinct, but funnily enough, they died off as a result of the very thing that they were designed for. This genus was designed to eat, but eventually they hit an evolutionary dead end, and they all just sort of died off because they were too specialized and couldn't adapt to the new food sources being produced by Africa's changing climate. Paranthropus also shows no direct connection to the family tree that produced Homo sapiens, so when you look at things, Paranthropus kind of just existed on this earth for a hot minute and pretty much accomplished nothing. That's pretty depressing. At number 7, Australopithecus africanus. In our last video, I told you guys about Australopithecus afarensis, but today I'm going to tell you about his relative, Australopithecus africanus. This early human lived in southern Africa between 3.3 and 2.1 million years ago. They were anatomically similar to Australopithecus afarensis, having a combination of ape-like and human characteristics. Compared to Afarensis, africanus had a rounder head and smaller teeth. The remains of Africanus also indicated that they were adapted for walking around bipedally, but they were also adapted for climbing as well. For a while, scientists thought that Australopithecus was a hunter after finding bones near their remains that at the time suggested that they used bones as tools and weapons, but it was later discovered that it was predators like lions, leopards, and hyenas who were responsible for leaving those bones behind. Those same predators were also responsible for hunting down Australopithecus africanus as well and making them part of their midnight snack. At number 6, Ardipithecus ramidus. Ardipithecus, aka Ardi, was a genus of early hominin who lived about 4.4 million years ago in eastern Africa. Ardi's discovery was very important in the scientific community because the evidence that was gathered from the remains that were found indicated some pretty key information regarding the evolution of primates to becoming bipedal. The foot bones discovered indicated a large toe combined with a rigid foot, and this combined with a reconstruction of Ardi's pelvic bone showed adaptations that combined tree climbing and bipedal activity. Ardi's discovery also opened a debate that contradicted the previous theory that the origin of bipedality occurred in the open savanna because Ardi's fossils indicated that she actually lived in a wooded environment. Before this, scientists believed that humans started to walk on 2 legs rather than 4 as a result of the climate becoming drier as environments became more open and grassy.
Our journey now takes us to Babylon around 1800 BCE. Here, sheep were vital for both wool and meat, right? Definitely need both of those to survive. Babylonian farmers began crossbreeding different sheep breeds to get better wool and of course, more meat. They mixed sheep with fine wool with ones that grew bigger, so of course, that should work, right? right? Why go through all of this trouble? High quality wool was a huge trade commodity and meat was essential for meals, so sounds like an amazing plan. This one didn't get too crazy. This one they kinda nailed and it was okay, but imagine the excitement as these early farmers improved their flocks, creating sheep that were not just more productive, but also economically valuable. You just made more food. It's like, hey, we didn't make a dragon, but we're not nearly as hungry. New sheep. Roman horse breeding. Let's gallop now to the Roman Empire around 100 CE, where Roman breeders were all about creating the ultimate cavalry horses. They crossed sturdy Iberian horses with speedy Eastern breeds to produce more powerful and agile steeds. Why? Why would they do all this? Well, because these improved horses were crucial for military campaigns and of course travel across the empire. It's not a small empire, I'll tell you that. Picture these horses in action, making a real difference in battles and transportation. That is huge. That is a major step for the Roman Empire. The better horses meant stronger cavalry and faster, more efficient communication across the vast Roman world. Yeah, didn't have a BlackBerry back then. You can't just be like, be there in 10, bye. No, you need a fast new horse. Mesopotamian Griffid hybrids. Imagine ancient Mesopotamia around 2500 BCE, a very, very long time ago, where myth and reality were intertwined. The Mesopotamians were fascinated by mythical creatures, particularly the griffin, which is a beast with the body of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle. So the scariest thing that you can imagine. Some early scientists and magicians, believe it or not, they experimented with crossbreeding lions and eagles, hoping to create real-life griffins. Now, the resulting hybrids were fearsome and exotic, often paraded in rituals or used as symbols of power because, well, what I just described, pretty powerful. A lion with wings? Can't beat that. So how did these hybrid creatures influence Mesopotamian art and culture? Did they serve as a bridge between mythology and reality, or did they evoke a deep sense of the uncanny? Probably a little bit of all of the above. Indian elephant hybrids in ancient India. Right, around 500 CE there were reports of attempts to crossbreed elephants with other large animals like buffaloes, all to create hybrid beasts with unique traits. Yeah, traits to stomp the enemy away. That's pretty much what we're looking for here. These experiments were driven by the desire to produce elephants with enhanced strength or specialized characteristics for ceremonial purposes. Yeah, let's make the elephant stronger. Why not? The hybrids, often grotesque in appearance, were all used in grand processions and rituals. Imagine the awe and unease at the same time that these creatures inspired among onlookers. I wouldn't watch that parade at all. If I did, I'd stand 50 yards back because that is a terrifying creature. And number 1, Byzantine camel hybrids. In the Byzantine Empire around 600 CE, there were attempts to crossbreed camels with other large desert animals like horses or donkeys, all to create hybrids suited for both riding and carrying many heavy goods. These experiments were aimed at improving efficiency in harsh desert environments, because that's a struggle, obviously. But the resulting creatures, with their strange mix of camel and horse features, they were both fascinating and disgusting to look at. Yeah, they were terrifying beasts. Picture these hybrids navigating the deserts, also so scary. The deserts of the Byzantium, how did these unusual animals impact trade and travel in that empire? Did they symbolize the empire's ingenuity, or did they highlight a more unsettling aspect and approach of animal manipulation and crossbreeding?
Number 10, Basilosaurus. Sounds like a basilisk. You may be thinking, is she about to say that basilisks are real? Am I wrong? Probably. I don't know you. How are you? How's your day going? Me? I feel like I'm developing thalassophobia. I don't even know how to say that right. Welcome everyone to the Basilosaurus, an evil shark snake whale that actually existed on the planet for a while there. Of course, they were massive, growing to 50 to 85 feet long in size, but its size was about the only thing it had going for it, sadly. It couldn't echolocate, couldn't deep dive or breach, just had to kind of chill at one level. Theoretically, if you did see it while swimming, it couldn't and wouldn't chase you if you dove too deep or climbed up on land, because why would it? It looked terrifying and could kill you, but this creature was probably the one who only ever earned a participation badge in terms of most terrifying creature in the sea. If you're like me, you started out scared, but now you just kind of feel bad for the guy. There's a reason he didn't survive. Number 9, Tanystropheus. It's a water giraffe! Tanystropheus is essentially a water giraffe, except with short legs and a super long neck stretching up to 20 feet long. It could literally be standing on the ocean floor and just have its like head poking up like a submarine telescope, just like. Which apparently is exactly what it did when hunting for food. Its front legs were shorter than its back legs, which somehow helped it pitch its neck above the surface to hunt for lunch on land. Fossils of the creature have been found near the waters of Europe and the Middle East and China, but exactly how much time they spent in the water versus on land is still debated. We may never know unless we find a mosquito or something conserved in resin that provides us with enough genetic info so we can bring them back to life. But that'll never happen, will it? Number 8, Jacalopterus. If you're having a bad day, then I have just the words to comfort you. Giant sea scorpion. You see? Nothing could be worse than that, except there is. I'm glad nature decided that we didn't need this and that they went extinct. It existed long before the dinosaurs and was a victim to the Permian-Triassic extinction event, which killed 90% of all life on Earth. One of the largest arthropods to ever exist, it reached about 8 feet long, which is about 3 feet larger than little me. Nothing really like it exists anymore, and its closest existing relatives to some degree is the horseshoe crab. They call it a sea scorpion, but whether its tail actually was venomous, we don't know. Archaeologists aren't sure, but its tail does resemble a scorpion, so they think it could be. Number 7, Helicoprion. Imagine a shark designed to cut pizza into 6 to 8 even slices. That is what a Helicoprion was. A prehistoric shark around 270 million years old, best known for its weird vertically circular toothy saw jaw. Paleontologists aren't quite sure as to where exactly its teeth protruded from. Some even consider that it might be attached to the tail or like the side. But the overall consensus was that it sat straight up in the mouth from the lower jaw. A specimen found in 1950 was located in a bay in Idaho, so we know they used to hang around that part of the world a bit. The mouth saw, as we're gonna call it, had 117 teeth, and based on a 3D animated model, scientists were able to determine that it did jut up from the lower jaw. Like that, like what is that? How did it eat? Like it just doesn't make sense. I'm not really surprised that this guy didn't last, because how would you deal with that? How? Number 6, Dunkleosteus. It's like a very big turtle mated with a shark and then immediately regretted it. Not as big as some of the other creatures I mentioned, but definitely something even they would hesitate to mess with. This dude wasn't a picky eater in any sense, weighing at 4,000 tons and measuring 33 feet long. This guy was ready and eager to compete with even the toughest ones on this list. Sharp teeth? Pfft, didn't need them. It used 2 sharp blades to snap and crush its prey, carving through bone like a hot knife through butter. That's how strong it was. It also had solid bone-like armor near its head that it used as a battering ram against any challengers. I feel like if there were mythical civilizations, this would be like the perfect underwater steed. It was made for war. But also, this was one of the creatures, and probably one of the first, to ever have to engage in coitus in order to reproduce. So, sure, some would say they were fighters, but underneath that hard shell, they were lovers too. They obviously weren't very good at it because they're extinct now. Before we go any further, remember to hit that like button and subscribe as always for more, especially if you're new here. You like us. Come on, like it, subscribe. We love it.
Number 5, Rapa Nui. Also referred to as the Easter Islanders, the Rapa Nui is known most famously for their Easter Island heads, the moai, that still to this day reach up to 13 feet tall and weigh over 80 tons. Massive achievements. Now how did they build these things, and also how do they move them around? Well, there's of course a crazy alien theory, and it's my favorite theory of all. The indigenous Rapa Nui claim that these statues once roamed the land, like Night at the Museum, but with, you know, less bubblegum and fun. There were once thousands of these sculptures, but during the 1700s, civil wars resulted in the Rapa Nui tearing them all apart. It was already an impressive feat building the moai, but in 1914, archaeologists discovered they also had bodies beneath them. Just like us YouTubers, you never know underneath here. We could be 7 feet tall, or we could be 5 feet tall. You really don't know. Look at this, you have no idea. The theory that all these statues would move around seems a little bit more plausible now that we know that.
At number 4, Nubia. The ancient civilization of Nubia was almost like ancient Egypt adjacent until it wasn't. Nubia was located south of Egypt and Sudan, and at one point they even ruled Egypt. Nubia even had their own pyramids, and over 200 of them still remain today. The period that the Nubians ruled over Egypt was known as Egypt's 25th dynasty, or the Black Dynasty, because of the dark skin of the Nubian pharaohs, and this time was known for its stability and prosperity, with a lot of their emphasis being on arts and culture of the people. This civilization had their own written language and rich culture, and they were also very wealthy as they were situated on a literal gold mine. They continued to thrive until an Egyptian pharaoh raided Nubia and turned it into a mineral extraction outpost. Rather than Nubia rule over Egypt, the tables turned and the roles were reversed, making Nubia an underling of Egypt. Eventually, the Nubian people just assimilated into the Egyptian population and Nubia just died off over time.
Number 3. The Incas. Their city is currently a wonder of the modern world. Machu Picchu was built over 500 years ago. It was once known as the lost city of the Inca, and it's absolutely beautiful. It was first discovered in 1911 by archaeologist Hiram Bingham when he and a small team were originally heading out to find the ancient city of Vilcabamba, but instead they found this landmark. The stones used to build this city were even heavier than they already look. We look at Stonehenge in disbelief right now, wondering how humans were able to lift those rocks, but look at this place. These stones each weighed over 50 tons, and with Machu Picchu literally translating to Old Mountain, those hills certainly don't look easy to climb. I complained about doing 2 trips carrying groceries. My back hurts just looking at this thing. The Inca were impressive builders. The city is designed perfectly. I mean, evidently. After 500 years of earthquakes and horrible weather, it's wild that the city is still in the shape that it's in. Elongated skulls were also found on the site by archaeologists, and many believe that it's aliens thanks to pop culture, but elongated skulls were actually a sign of royalty in the Incas. It's no surprise Machu Picchu is the most visited place in Peru. You just might want to take your trail shoes when you head over there.
On number 2, Norte Chico civilization. The story of the Norte Chico civilization is fascinating, yet also shrouded in mystery. Overall, very little is known about the Norte Chico civilization, but it is believed that this pre-Columbian society is one of the oldest known civilizations in the Americas. Researchers know more about this civilization's infrastructure than the way that the people lived. We know that they had huge buildings like pyramids and complex irrigation systems, but what makes this so bizarre is the fact that there's no evidence of any pottery in the civilization, which suggests that they don't know how to use it. How are you gonna build a whole pyramid but struggle to make a pot? I don't get it. There is also evidence that these people worshipped some kind of deity, but again, no one knows what form this deity took. Now here's where the mystery really comes in. No one knows what happened to the Norte Chico civilization. The settlements were abandoned sometime around 1800 BC, but no one really knows why. There's no evidence of any kind of warfare, and there were no natural disasters to cause them to flee their homes. The people just kind of disappeared, and no one has been able to piece together the puzzle, so we may never know.
And coming in at number 1, the Greek civilization. The Antikythera mechanism is the world's oldest analog computer. It would keep track of the cosmos, and to this day we're trying to figure out the exact purpose of it or how it was built. But what we do know is that one of those dials in there was meant to keep track of the Olympics. That's how important this event was. Thanks to the ancient Greeks, now we get to see dudes hucking shot puts at people. It's great. The ancient Greek civilization thrived in Greece around 500 BC to 2700 BC. The rich history of ancient Greeks spans such a long time that we've divided their time into periods, like the Archaic, Hellenistic, and Classical period. Their wine was so good that they had a wine god in the pantheon, god Dionysus. What an OG. It was deemed a hubris for Greeks to get intoxicated, so they would also add water to their wine. That way they could keep the party going all night, of course, but actually it was done so nobody became violent. Only god Dionysus would drink wine straight out. That's pretty hardcore. If inventing the Olympics wasn't badass enough, they also used stones instead of toilet paper, so I'll let you imagine that in your head. We'll leave on that note. That's a nice pretty image to finish on.